Welcome on in, everybody, to the All Aussie Rules YouTube channel. This is our Grand Final 2024 preview episode. Massive weekend of football coming up. We've got Sydney Swans taking on the Brisbane Lions, the two losers from the last two Grand Finals, going up against each other in the decider to win the 2024 Premiership. Who takes it home? We're going to have a look at everything Grand Final Day in this video here. So stick around. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We're slowly building up that subscriber list. Let's aim for 100 this week. Help me get there. Let's jump into Sydney Swans, Brisbane Lions, big game. First bit of information. We'll put this slide up, but before we really get talking into that, it's official. Callum Mills has been ruled out as of about 5 minutes ago. The announcement went through at time of recording. Obviously, by the time you watch this, it'll be yesterday's news. But Callum Mills officially not playing in the Grand Final. So, massive loss for Sydney. Very disappointing for Millsy. But, I mean, he didn't play last week. They managed fine. So, I think they'll be... It's a loss, but it's not the biggest loss. And, yeah, that's my thoughts at least. It's going to be a cracking game either way. So, disappointing for him. In all honesty, teams that don't get announced at time of recording for another day and a bit, so I'll probably do another short or something once teams are announced, but I doubt Sydney will make any changes from last week. I'd imagine they probably run the same team. So disappointing for some other players as well, mainly Taylor Adams. Obviously, after the heartbreak of last year, to be missing out on another grand final with another team is quite disappointing for him. Not to say anything else about it. Brisbane, they're more than likely going to have to change their ruckman, Oscar McInerney. I don't know if he's officially been ruled out, but let's be honest, I can't see a world where he plays. He dislocated his shoulder twice last weekend, so it would be very, very strange for them to play him, I reckon. Which is a massive loss for the Lions. In all honesty, it could be the deciding factor in this match. They got away with it last week with him going off injured. Joe Danaher could go into the ruck that day, but I mean, Geelong aren't the best ruck team in the competition, so it was probably the best case scenario against Geelong for you to lose your ruckman, because that's probably one of Geelong's weaknesses, if not their biggest weakness, in my opinion. So, in all honesty, it looks like Darcy Fort's going to come in. He's played a few games. He's shown a little bit of ability. I'm not convinced, but we'll see how he goes. Really opens up the game for Brodie Grundy. You've got to think that he's going to have a field day. Surely. He has to psych himself up for a big game, because it's going to be a great opportunity for him to really dominate a game. Which he can do. He gets around the ground. He gets lots of the football. He basically becomes a midfielder after the ruck contest in a lot of ways. And I think this really opens up a really good opportunity for him. We'll jump into some of the stats in this game. We'll just extend this picture out a bit so you can actually read some of the numbers. Obviously, 19-6 for Sydney for the year. That includes finals matches. 17 wins, 8 losses and a draw for Brisbane, so a game and a half behind, but played an extra game, so really 2 games behind. First on the ladder, fifth on the ladder, so interesting positions, I guess, for them. Last 5 weeks, Sydney have won 5 in a row. Just before that, they had a little bit of a rough patch, but they've turned it around. They've won their last 5, so they're going well. Brisbane have won 4 of their last 5, including their last 4. So both teams in really good form coming into this game. A look at some of the key stats here. First up, offensively, first ranked offense versus the 4th best offense. So 2 high scoring teams, and also 2 really good defenses, the 3rd best defense and the 6th best defense. This includes finals matches in all of these stats as well. Interestingly, accurate team Sydney, they're the 5th best in that form of the game. Form of the game, that's a weird way to express it, but you know what I mean. Meanwhile, Brisbane are the 15th most accurate team in front of goal, so they really have struggled all year round. And it's cost them games, and you just got to hope, if you're a Brisbane fan, that they do not do that sort of performance in the grand final, because that could well decide the game. I've said it all year long. I mean, I'm not the only one that said it, but poor kicking in front of goal costs matches, and it could well cost them the grand final if they kick like they have, certainly recently. Forward efficiency-wise, 4th versus 5th, basically dead even. Defensive efficiency, once again, very similar. Neither team really great in defensive efficiency. So that's scores per inside 50. So oppositions do score pretty well against them. Get shots, sorry, not scores. Shots from inside 50s. Both teams not the greatest in that area, but they're still okay. The overall net gain with their forward efficiency, because both teams are really good forward-wise. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Inside 50 differential. Brisbane dominate this area. They're the number 2 ranked team. Sydney are number 7. So both teams pretty solid, but Brisbane really good in that area. Clearance-wise, Sydney have always been around that middle mark all year round. They've stayed pretty similar. Meanwhile, Brisbane have been 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, pretty much all year. They end up the year in 2nd in clearance differential, mainly through stoppage clearances. Not so good in centre clearances, but still not too bad. Contested footy, Sydney are now the number 1 ranked contested football team in the league. Meanwhile, Brisbane are 14th, interestingly enough. Uncontested footy, pretty similar. 9th for Sydney, 6th for Brisbane. Probably won't be too much uncontested footy in this game, I don't think. I mean, there'll be plenty, but not compared in comparison to like home and away games. I think there will be a lot more contested footy in this. Tackle count, Sydney really good at plus 3.3 per game. Meanwhile, Brisbane are the number 18th ranked team in tackle differential, minus 8.3. It's not their style of play, and that's fine. It's worked for them, let's be honest. Turnover game, intercept game. Brisbane really good in this area, which is surprising for a team that does well out of the clearance. They also are better at the intercept game than Sydney, plus 1.5 per game, 7th ranked in the AFL. Sydney, 11th ranked in the AFL at minus 0.2 per game. So, ebbs and flows. I think if Brisbane kick straight, they win this game. In all honesty, they are, I think, on paper, the team that wins this one. At full strength, certainly. They're not at full strength, obviously. Sydney are a lot closer to full strength than Brisbane are. But it's just the way Brisbane play, they really dominate the ball. They get plenty of it. They get it forward a lot. And they get shots a lot. Their issue is that 46.8% accuracy. They need to go over 50%. And if they do go over 50% in this game, I think they win this match. Even with no Oscar McInerney. Meanwhile, key for Sydney is just going to be the traditional way they play. Just stick around in games and have that burst that at some point will overrun the opposition. They rely a lot on their midfielders getting forward and kicking goals. So that's Isaac Heaney, Chad Warner, and Errol Goulden. They rely on them getting probably 5 goals a game between the 3 of them almost. So I think they're going to need plenty of goals from those 3. In all honesty, there's no reason to think that they won't get 5+ goals. Isaac Heaney, there's going to be a lot about him this week. Probably been Sydney's best player all year. In my opinion, a lot of people's opinion, he's been their best player this year. He would definitely remember what happened in 2022 Grand Final. Obviously that day, Sydney got pumped. Isaac Heaney had a very quiet game, especially first half, but all the way through the game. So he'll be out for, I guess, revenge on that performance. And in all honesty, he's going to be capable of it. His season this year has been outstanding, and I'd be very surprised to see him not perform outstandingly in this one. We've got some more stats for you coming up. Scoring and score sources and whatnot. So let's have a look at this, because there's some very interesting numbers indeed on this screen right now. First up, quarter by quarter scoring. As you can see, first quarters have not been great for Sydney this year. Meanwhile, Brisbane have dominated first quarters this year, 22-4. And one of those losses was 2 weeks ago against GWS. That's their only loss since the halfway mark of the season in first quarters. They're plus 12.7 points per game in that first quarter. Meanwhile, Sydney are minus 5.3 in first quarters. So we've got the best team in the AFL in first quarters against one of the worst. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But the rest of the game swings in Sydney's favour. They're really good in second and third quarters and close games out really well as well. Plus 4.9 points still in that last quarter. Meanwhile, Brisbane actually lose the last quarter. Only 12 wins, 12 losses, 2 draws from their season. It's going to be a game of two halves on the numbers, on the sheets. It's not necessarily how the game will play out, but it's certainly a trend that has been the case for most of the season. However, Brisbane's last 2 fourth quarters have been really good. GWS, they smacked them by 26 points and won the game. And then last week against Geelong, they won the last quarter in that one as well to finish the game strong. So it's possible that Brisbane do okay here in the last quarter, but the history of this season suggests maybe it might be tough. Looking at half by half, first half's Brisbane plus 14.8 is huge. Sydney plus 5.6 is pretty solid. And then in the second half, the plus 15.3 for Sydney is massive. 18 wins, 7 losses in second halves. And Brisbane, meanwhile, 12 wins, 14 losses in second halves. But crucially, plus 1.58 points per half. So numbers make it very interesting reading. You think the first quarter on paper goes the way of the Lions, and then Sydney fight their way back for the rest of the game, and it ends up close. Who knows? But that's what the numbers are telling us. Score sources. So this is where they score their points from: kick-in, stoppages, turnovers. They're the 3 options to get a score, to be the kicking, the starting of a score. As you can see, kick-ins, Sydney not great at 3.34, 3.4 against. Meanwhile, Brisbane, a lot more scoring from that area, but once again, also negative in net there, so 5.2 to 5.8. So not a massive difference either way. Both teams kind of not the best at defending or scoring from kick-ins. Meanwhile, stoppages, this is Sydney's best avenue. Scoring from stoppages is really good. 37.44 and only 28 points against is a really good net of plus 9.4 points per game. Meanwhile, stoppages for Brisbane is a net gain, but not much. 35.94, 32.1 against. So Sydney, from stoppages, is where they're going to be aiming to probably win this game. But having said that, that's still pretty good again from turnovers. 56.24 and 45.1 against from turnovers. Brisbane, though, this is their best area of scoring, 52.3 points per game. Meanwhile, defensively only concede 39.1. So that's a net of 13.2. So more than 2 goals a game better from turnovers than their opposition typically. Sydney not far behind that, but just a little bit. So turnovers could play a big part, but I think the main thing is Sydney are dominant from stoppages, and they will be looking to use that in this one to continue that on. Now from where the score launches start from, so there's 3 options for this: defensive half, forward half, or from the centre bounce. Sydney really good from the centre bounce, plus 2.2 points from the centre bounce is one of the best in the AFL. Meanwhile, Brisbane's is really quite poor, minus 1.4. So look for Sydney, just like I said, from stoppages, from the centre bounce is going to be crucial. Brisbane need to find a way to stop that. Might be even harder this week with no ruckman. Well, they will be playing a ruckman, but not their normal ruckman. So that area will be interesting. They also transition the ball really well from defensive half, plus 10 points per half per game, from the defensive half. So really good number there in favour of Sydney. Brisbane okay, but not great. Only plus 2.6. And then scoring from the forward half is where Brisbane do their work. Sydney still plus 9 or plus 8.4. Sorry. But that's still pretty solid numbers. Meanwhile, Brisbane score 47 points from the forward half. A lot of that from turnovers. Meanwhile, only concede 31.9. So that's a very low number, which is a very big positive for Brisbane. So they'll be looking to get that forward pressure going, keep that repeat entries going, and trying to get their scores that way. Kick straight, win the game, Brisbane. Meanwhile, Sydney, they can do it all, no doubt about it. They're going to try and get it from the centre bounce. When they get centre clearances, they don't dominate centre clearances, but when they do get centre clearances, they score really well. Defensive half transition is great. It's been their thing all year. They destroyed Port with it in that first half last week. They transition the ball really well. They run, handball, kick, handball, whatever they need to do. They get the ball moving forward. They move it fast. They get over the back and they score goals. And that's what they're going to be doing here. They're going to be aiming for that. So that's Sydney, Brisbane. Big week of football. Before I give you my tip for this game, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Check out all the content. We have 2 podcasts go live every week, Mondays and Fridays, including a grand final special tomorrow. We'll be looking at the Brownlow. We'll look at last week's games. We'll be looking at this weekend's grand final. So check all that content out. The podcast goes live. YouTube, Spotify, Mondays, Fridays. Plenty of other content. Season reviews for every team. A lot of other stuff as well. Check out all the socials at All Aussie Rules. I thank you for watching this one. We're going with Sydney by 15 points just because the Big O is not playing. Sydney by 15 is the tip. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.